So then, am I to understand it right that you folks would rather organize yourself rather than me call you by the cards? Okay. So each one of you, if you'll come up, you speak for 3 minutes and tell us what's on your mind.
Starting
now. Too late. Okay, come on.
Hi, hello, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Jessie Lee Van Sant, and I'm with Occupy Mendocino, as are this line of people behind me. And I'm here tonight with Occupy to ask the Fort Bragg City Council to declare a foreclosure prevention zone in our community. Other folks will tell you all about a foreclosure prevention zone, and they'll share numbers with you about what's been happening across our nation and in our states and counties and towns. But I want to talk to you first about our attitudes towards families who get foreclosed. It's really easy to blame the homeowner, the family, the head of the family when a foreclosure happens, but we really need to change this. Most of us, if we're lucky, get to buy a house one time. And so we're far from expert on how to do that and what a loan means and what a mortgage means and all of this sort of arcane language. We depend on real estate agents and bankers and mortgage brokers to tell us about what this means and translate all the paperwork. And these professionals have failed in their responsibility in the last 7 years plus. To protect their clients in this foreclosure calamity that's happening across the nation. What's happened to our economy is pretty high profile right now. I imagine you guys read things and see stuff on television. Lots of news stories about actual fraud in the foreclosure process and the housing market crash that started a number of years ago. All 50 of the state's attorney generals were tasked to investigate the MERS system, which is the Mortgage Electronic Registration System. And 49 of those attorneys general worked together, and they discovered that the mortgage industry has committed actual widespread fraud. And regular homeowners are just not to blame for this. They're the victims of it. They listened to the advice of the people they hired and trusted to tell them what to do. Those people became the prey of Wall Street. It was a premeditated crime. It became all about making money on people instead of taking care of them as customers, as consumers, as clients. So it's important to realize that 99% of the people being put out of their homes right now are victims of a crime. One wave has already swept across the U.S. and another's coming. It's like a tsunami, unfortunately, because the worst of it is underneath with all that power pushing and destroying. And these fraudulent foreclosures are undermining communities through loss of property taxes and fees, which we've discovered recently. And we can't afford that kind of economic injury because we don't have a cushion anymore. Mendocino County can't afford to be defrauded, nor can Fort Bragg City afford it. And the ripple effect of illegal foreclosure is washing over all of us, causing damage in many aspects of our lives. We need to stand up and tell our community that families facing foreclosure are not alone. And we'll help them as much as we can to fight the crime wave, because it's criminal. And I hope that by the conclusion of this presentation, you will agree and decide to declare a foreclosure prevention zone in and around our town. Thank you very much for listening carefully to these people behind me lined up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jess.
Good evening, council members. My name is Agnes Woolsey, and I'm a member of Occupy Mendocino and the Fighting Foreclosure Committee. I've learned a lot about foreclosure and the need to fight it by creating foreclosure prevention zones. Why does this matter to Fort Bragg? Because fraudulent foreclosures undermine the tax base for small communities and cities. Petaluma, for example, lost $200,000 in fees and $800,000 in declining property taxes because of fraudulent foreclosures from 2008 to 2011. By the end of 2012, foreclosures will cost California homeowners and local governments an estimated $650 billion. A small town like Fort Bragg can't afford to have income stolen from the community by fraudulent actions. On March 12th, the California Occupy groups demonstrated at county recorders' offices statewide and brought attention to the fraudulent practices of the major banks. A Ukiah homeowner viewed his documents with the Mendocino County Recorder and not only found a lack of payment of recording fees by two of the many consecutive mortgage holders of his property, but also found that the current legal owner of the loan wasn't recorded. The bundling and selling of such mortgages by Wall Street and major banks by the MERS system was set up by the banks not only saved them $2 billion in fee avoidance, but ultimately resulted in the 2008 economic disaster. Gross evidence of such irregularities was found in the San Francisco assessor's recent audit of recorded foreclosure documents. 99% had irregularities. 84% had one illegal violations, and 66% had multiple violations, indicating a huge loss of fees to the city council coffers. What's more important? Families having their homes stolen because only the legal holder of their loan can foreclose. To remedy this, Nevada requires simultaneous recording of an affidavit of authority stating who actually owns the property. The number of recorded foreclosures dropped 75% in the first month because the affidavit contained criminal and other legal repercussions. Finally, the identification of the actual legal holder of the loan enables homeowners in the pre-foreclosure pipeline to renegotiate a loan modification and thereby avoid foreclosure and eviction. For both economic and humane reasons, the City of Fort Bragg must address the foreclosure issues. I urge the City Council to 1. Declare Fort Bragg a foreclosure prevention zone. 2. Request an independent forensic audit of recorded foreclosure documents and prosecution of fraudulent foreclosures. And 3. Recover funds owed to the Mendocino County and the City of Fort Bragg. Thank you.
If we can try to stay in our 3-minute time.
Good evening, Mayor Turner and members of the City Council. My name is Susan Nutter, and I wish to briefly discuss the loss of income from assessments of devalued properties and other effects of the high foreclosure rate in Fort Bragg. This year, 53 foreclosures have either already occurred in Fort Bragg or are in the pipeline until July, so that's the first 6 months. Since 2007, the median property value has fallen more than 53% from $430,000 to $200,000 in 2012. The income to the city does not yet reflect this decrease, but will in the future as properties are sold and reassessed. Taxes and fees will diminish and the tax base will shrink as home assessments drop, which means that each of our share of the cost will be higher as we absorb the loss of income. Fort Bragg is also losing income from fees such as water and sewer charges. A 2008 National League of Cities survey showed that decreased city revenues and funding for other programs impacted cities more than the increased foreclosures, even though the loss of revenue is the direct result of foreclosures. Fort Bragg will be required to directly address the stress on services related to the foreclosure process, as well as the cost of additional fire and police protection and maintenance activities. This will divert resources from other programs, including services for vulnerable residents who are displaced. Our police department reports that transients have been moving into vacant houses, but alert neighbors from the Neighborhood Watch, by the way, notify the police so the problem is minimized. Fortunately, fortunately, blight on neighborhoods is not a problem so far in Fort Bragg, unlike larger communities. Yesterday, I drove by some foreclosed bank-owned homes here and was glad to see that they were not boarded up and do not differ in upkeep from the neighboring houses. According to the Joint Economic Committee of Congress, the average foreclosure can cost up to $80,000 for all stakeholders: homeowners, neighbors, cities and local governments, lenders, and loan servicers. Whereas foreclosure prevention counseling can cost as little as $1,000 per household. So for economic reasons alone, I urge you to make the City of Fort Bragg a foreclosure prevention zone. Thank you so much.
Good evening, City Council members. I'm Richard Karch. Yeah, I'd like to mention a number of other reasons to stop foreclosures. One is stress on available public services, on school funding and public health and medical services. You probably remember Frank Hartzell's recent coverage of the Fort Bragg Food Bank and the Advocate. It vividly showed the increased need for services on the coast. More people in need and less donations coming in. Recently, someone donated a bag of jackets and sweaters, actually 7 bags, and the woman who accepted them said they would be probably gone by the end of the day. When times are tough, as they are now, people facing foreclosure or loss of jobs are lucky if they can get emergency food while being displaced. Local nonprofits do their best to help with food, job counseling, and clothes for job interviews. And hospitality house is a good resource and always full. As you know, many nonprofits are running on empty. Budgets are slashed and there are more clients than ever before. All of the free food services are filled with hungry, displaced citizens, and folks who seek social service help can have a really long wait, and many of them wind up living on the streets while they're waiting. The state of California funds school districts based on the ADA, their daily attendance. When children miss school because of unreliable transportation, inadequate access to health care, and the disruption caused by foreclosure or homelessness, our schools and our students suffer. Foreclosures cause absenteeism, truancy, and undereducated community. A recent study found that half of foreclosures are due to a loss of income because of a medical crisis. And with that, 7 in 10 homeowners who go into foreclosure had significant medical distress while going through the trauma of losing their homes. So it's kind of a multiple thing that adds up to a whole lot of stress on these individuals and an immense strain on local mental and medical health providers. This also reflects greatly on the public health of Fort Bragg and the North Coast. We're trying to cultivate a healthy community here on the coast, so I don't feel we can turn our backs on the ramifications of forced homelessness when there are possible remedies like this foreclosure prevention zone proposed by Occupy Mendocino. So I urge you to endorse the foreclosure prevention zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Hello. Good evening. I'm Cecile Cutler, and I'd like to address the high foreclosure rate and depressed real estate values here on the coast, and the loss of jobs, loss of small businesses in Fort Bragg. There's a link between small business owners, toxic mortgages, and financial distress and mortgage defaults. These results in job loss, unemployment, and accelerate the pace of foreclosures. We have a self-perpetuating cycle. Falling real estate values affects residential construction. More than 90% of our contractors are small businesses. Nationally, the loss of jobs in the construction industry is 38%, and the problem here in Fort Bragg is probably greater, due to the large number of self-employed construction workers that do not show up in payroll statistics. And of course, there's a ripple effect in jobs lost in the construction-related retail businesses such as building supply stores and lumber yards. Controller Roger Fenderson at Rossi's confirms that this is true both locally and statewide. Many small retail stores here in town have sadly had to close their doors due to their credit crunch and economic downturn. This is a downward spiral. Fort Bragg is losing vital members of our community, businesses that make our town so special, as well as losing the income derived from the taxes that the businesses generate. Fort Bragg is greatly harmed by our foreclosure crisis, and our town needs a public policy to address it. The Foreclosure Prevention Zone resolution, which we will present after we finish speaking here, gives the Fort Bragg City Council such a public policy and suggests actions the city can take to address the foreclosure crisis. I therefore urge the City Council to pass this resolution to help stop the loss of jobs and small businesses in Fort Bragg. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Safran, and I live in town. I'm here to talk about how foreclosures elevate crime and consequently increase the cost to police, fire department, and court budgets, which we can ill afford in this economic crisis. As has been stated before, behind each foreclosure is a family whose lives will dramatically change. Historically, households have entered foreclosure when events such as divorce, job loss, illness, or accident change the family's financial situation. In addition to these events, we now have widespread use of high-cost unsuitable loans, a sharp decline in property values, and a softening housing market fueled by much of the current foreclosure wave. This situation has contributed to the nationwide recession. The growing foreclosure crisis has forced suburban law enforcement agencies to tackle a new challenge: policing empty houses. Now, perhaps it hasn't happened here yet, but what we can expect that as evictions mount, many houses remain unsold for months, even years. Vacant properties have become havens for squatters, vandals, thieves, and worst of all, partying teenagers. In some places, officers are spending extra time checking vacant houses on regular patrols and using maps of foreclosed properties as guides while working with community watch groups to identify trouble spots. Empty driveways, overgrown lawns, realty signs, lock boxes, and no trespassing notices in windows are all signals to would-be violators. People are obviously angry, and when law enforcement personnel go to these houses to serve evictions, they sometimes find that the owners have stripped their houses of toilets, stoves, and refrigerators. And just recently, I personally heard of an entire central heating system that had been removed. Our citizens are important to Fort Bragg. Passing the Foreclosure Prevention Zone resolution will put less strain on the city's limited resources and let the citizens know that you care. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Sheila Dawn Tracy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, on the issue of foreclosures. It is most important that we recognize the looming dangers to our society of the stress people take on when in danger of losing their homes. My background is in physical education, which includes an understanding of the mental capacity to cope under duress. In the current climate of economic instability, most people can adapt to minor adjustments involving reduced income. But for a homeowner with a mortgage, the loss of a job can quickly escalate into loss of their base of stability, their homes. Sometimes the downward spiral is compounded by the breakup of a marriage, separation from loved ones, loss of self-esteem, and the ultimate loss, that of the will to live, in unbearable pain resulting in self-destruction or targeted violence of others. This is a time for across-the-board cuts in social services at county, state, and federal levels, a time when emergency counseling for those in crisis is crucial in saving the lives of members of all our communities. One might care to wonder what becomes of individuals and families when they sustain severe losses. Unfortunately, that database has shrunk considerably since the Department of Public Health has discontinued its former practice of compiling such statistics in a comprehensive study. Calls to the Director of Mental Health were not returned in a timely manner to add light in this dark corner. However, we do have our own experiences from which to draw. Is there anyone so fortunate among us as to not know a relative, a friend, or a neighbor experiencing discord or stress due to a mounting debt? In conversations with the community, I became aware of 2 families who have left the area due to foreclosures. When figures from research indicate that only 90 families a year move into Mendocino County, 2 in the city of Fort Bragg becomes significant. The homeless population, always a problem, is significantly and negatively impacted through foreclosures. A family man, a longtime resident, went into foreclosure and jumped off the Albion Bridge a year and a half ago. That is certainly significant to his family and his community. Only last summer, our entire community was emotionally devastated by the violence that destroyed the lives of 2 very valued members of our community. With less revenue available for crisis intervention, foreclosure can be the fuse to the veritable powder keg of similar tragedies, all of which are undermining our collective morale with a sense of our failure to respond with compassion to the victims of the unscrupulous, unregulated, uninvestigated, and unprosecuted fraudulent financial practices of lending institutions. The answer is not in allocating more money on a state level for SWAT law enforcement teams to invade our community, deprive the mentally ill to their constitutional right of defense and trial, and make us feel more unsafe as a community with a show of force of loaded guns in our backyards and our highways. You, as our local elected officials, are our first defense. We urge you to declare a foreclosure prevention zone and support a state moratorium on foreclosures, as accountability for illegal practices is paramount. Moreover, cities like Flint, Michigan, home of Michael Moore, and parallel to our city in being...
If you close it out.
Excuse me, I have 5 minutes. I think... No, I have 5 minutes. Your policy is 1318, I emailed you, your policy is 5 minutes, and I need my 2 minutes. Thank you.
Sheila, I announced at the beginning here that we were going to do...
Excuse me, you have a policy And it is an Occupy theme that if you create a policy, you follow it. So that is your policy, and I demand my 2 minutes. So I would like to say, and this is very important because it's involving solutions, not the problem. You've heard a lot about problems. In the city of Flint, Michigan, home of Michael Moore, and in this book, Citizen Moore by Roger Rappaport, it talks about Flint being a parallel to our city in being reliant on one corporation for a large part of its tax base and job base. Flint has undertaken a revision of its tax ordinances.
Take a 5-minute recess.
Under a county-wide business model known as the Land Bank, Flint's treasurer and Land Bank director, Dan Kildee, has managed not only to keep every homeowner in Flint out of foreclosure, but to...
I'm sorry, I have to follow the 5-minute recess. I'm going to be very fast, and I hope that you'll bear with us for the rest of the time. My name is Claire Lobel, and I'm talking tonight about the effects of housing instability on families and the result of foreclosures and evictions. Residents of foreclosed properties are almost always forced to move out of their homes, but little is known about where they go next. Many people forced out of their homes by foreclosures move in with family or friends. Those of you who have access to more financial resources probably find places to rent relatively quickly. But foreclosures may be the final step on a path of unstable housing for others. Homeowners in foreclosures see their credit rating plummet, making it difficult to purchase or rent another home. Even if a family can find a landlord willing to rent to them or a lender willing to lend to them, many have used up any financial reserves during the foreclosure period, making down payments and security deposits unaffordable. Renters whose landlords are foreclosed upon may receive only short notice on an eviction. If they do not leave when they are served by a notice of eviction, they may be sued, and their rental record will be permanently blemished. Even those who may forfeit rent payments or security deposits, making it hard to secure a new rental house or apartment on such short notice. Homeless shelters are seeing an increase in people served, suggesting that some families in foreclosure, both former owners and renters, have become homeless. The number of foreclosed families facing homelessness is growing because doubling up with family and friends may offer a short-term solution, but it does not offer the long-term. Research indicates that families that are able to find homes and apartments to rent probably have to downgrade their housing quality. Moving may not be a big problem for many people, but it can be damaging for both the very old and the very young. And here you see a very old one in front of you. The elderly are adversely affected by moving, particularly by forced or voluntary relocation. Moving can trigger a series of emotional and physical setbacks from which other people may not recover. And research has shown that is particularly important for seniors as their health declines and independence lessens. Elderly people rely on their community connections. And it's important for children also. For these reasons, I implore you to think about a foreclosure prevention zone at your next meeting, and thank you for your time.
Hello, City Council. Greetings. Good evening. I'm Ellen Witherite. In my neighborhood of Livingston, Willow, and Wall, near the new skate park and the CB Star Center, I've watched several families settle into homes they thought were theirs. Planting, scraping, painting, then gone. They're gone now. They were driven into economic hardship, the morass where millions of Americans are right now, who had thought that they were making it, thought they were having the dream, and it turned into a nightmare. Local communities now feel the loss of tax income as property values plunge. Municipal and county governments lose fees, while demand, like the hospitality house and the food bank and the clinic and many other services, are rising. In 1933, the Glass-Steagall Act was passed because of the Great Depression. In 1999, Glass-Steagall was repealed by Graham Lynch Bliley. It was a firewall between commercial banks, our deposits, and investment banks, which is financial gambling. The firewall was torn down, and greed overcame. By 2007-2008, the United States faced another economic catastrophe, and we, the people, were left with millions of personal disasters and taxpayer bailouts, as you know, costing billions of dollars. Now the economy is just barely recovering from that meltdown, but the fraudulent actions of the mortgage banking sector threatens again. The U.S. Attorney General investigated and discovered that the mortgage industry has perpetrated criminal fraud on the U.S. home buying citizenry. Family homes have been stolen. We must stop rampant foreclosure from throwing innocent families out of their homes, from throwing our small city into a financial downturn. The Fort Bragg City Council can take the action of declaring a foreclosure prevention zone for our community and saying out loud that we stand up to this. Thank you.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Linda Jupiter. I want to say happy birthday to you, Scott. Today's my birthday as well.
Hey, go Aries.
Yay, Aries. I live right around the corner from Ellen, and I agree. Just on Wall Street, right now there are 2 foreclosures in 1 block. I'm also part of Occupy Mendocino's Fighting Foreclosure Group. And our website is www.occupymendocino.net. I want to thank you for listening tonight. We came to share with you as much of the hard evidences that we could. There's a huge amount of documented criminal action on the part of the banking and mortgage section of our economy. We can only present a little bit of it, the proverbial tip of the iceberg. But the main reason we came is that we're really worried. When we began to learn about the wave of foreclosures washing across the United States, we thought we'd be able to help local families keep their homes. But due to the corruption in the banking and lending systems, we discovered that that was almost impossible to do. And people who were facing foreclosure felt as though it was a personal failure, which it wasn't. And they were ashamed and wanted to hide from everyone, so they waited until it was too late to get help. Then we learned why this crushing wave is so dangerous, because it's an economic catastrophe at all levels in our country. It's stealing homes from families, making them homeless. It's stealing vital money from communities and pouring that money into the hands of banking industry CEOs. This fraud is still happening and will continue to happen unless the local, state, and federal governments enact a complete moratorium on foreclosures until investigations show which foreclosures are legal and proper procedures are reestablished at all levels. We came to you, our City Council, to let you know about this danger to our community and to ask you to act to help stop illegal foreclosure and to protect our community. We need to keep families in their homes and start prosecuting the individuals and the institutions who have committed these crimes against all of us. We ask you to make this declaration with us. We, the people of Fort Bragg, Mendocino County, stand by those families in our community who are facing the hardship of foreclosure and eviction, because there's growing evidence that many of these foreclosures are fraudulent, and because foreclosure affects our entire community in so many negative ways. We, as concerned residents and people with close ties to the Northern California coast, affirm our common purpose to ensure the well-being of our community by declaring a foreclosure prevention zone in our city and surrounding area. While we recognize that this foreclosure crisis affects everyone differently, we must respond as a unified community to find lasting solutions. Therefore, in solidarity with our neighbors, to protect families from wrongful foreclosure and eviction, to protect our community from the negative impact of illegal foreclosure, in a spirit of trust and hope for a better future to come, we hereby declare Fort Bragg to be a foreclosure prevention zone. And just one other thing, I just want to say that tomorrow the foreclosure prevention group will be meeting with the Board of Supervisors in Ukiah. They've asked to have a presentation there as well. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Howard Ennis, a resident here of Fort Bragg. My friends and colleagues who have joined together as Occupy Mendocino, thank you for the privilege of speaking with you about this serious matter of home foreclosures here in Fort Bragg. We appreciate your patience this evening. Let me add a very short footnote to the factual picture that's been painted for you this evening. I've been around quite a while. I lived through the Great Depression. As a young person, I saw how we managed to work through our way out, even before World War II upended the economy. I was there when FDR said, "You elected me, now build a movement to make me do what you want." And I remember well how my friend and mentor, Eleanor Roosevelt, set a pattern for down-to-earth, direct civil action and speaking out, how she epitomized the reality that individual responsibility and local action precedes and is central to national action. And so I urge you, as a City Council of Fort Bragg, to go on record in support of your constituents, to send a message to the moneyed interests that are trying to deny our dignity, to violate our very being. I know that as our City Council on the national scene, your voice counts. You can do what FDR asked you to do, belong to a movement. We thank you for listening and for taking a stand for decency. Our next speaker will outline what you need to do.
Good evening. My name's Carrie Durkee, and glad to be here. Thank you for your patience. And there are 4 items that are our recommendations for movement in this foreclosure-free zone. The city will request that lending institutions operating in Fort Bragg attend a meeting in April of 2012 to discuss specific methods for preventing foreclosures. The special effort will be made to include representatives of the 4 banks in the area that have had the most foreclosures: Mendocino Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, Mendocino Savings, and Wells Fargo. The second item, the city will review its banking and investment practices to ensure that public funds are invested in responsible financial institutions to support our community. The council may also consider future legislation to promote responsible banking and provide an incentive for banking institutions to invest in more of our city, particularly in regard to stabilizing the housing market. This review should include evaluating city policies on responsible depositing and management of city funds. Number 3, the city will examine the number of home foreclosures in Fort Bragg, the geographical neighborhoods in which the foreclosures occur, and the lender information on homes involving the foreclosure process, including lender-owned homes post-auction. The city will contact Mendocino Board of Supervisors and recommend that the county perform an outside forensic audit, recorded foreclosure documents for the last 5 years, request funding from the state to perform the audit, and refer fraudulently filed foreclosures to the district attorney for prosecution. Thank you for your attention and consideration of this matter.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Pat Karch, and I'm reading this letter on behalf of an anonymous person. It's entitled A Loan Modification Story, and it really speaks to what we're talking about tonight. This is a person's actual experience, and this is what we would like to avoid. In 2008, due to a large drop in income, I paid a law firm and entered a loan modification process with Wells Fargo, the holder of my mortgage. The next year and a half was hell. The law firm sent my application to Wells Fargo, and then they folded, and I lost the money I had given them. After that, I must have contacted Wells Fargo 1,000 times. I encountered a huge bureaucracy, and each person I spoke to was in a different location and told me something different. Then I received about 10 copies of a certified letter from a foreclosure company saying they were empowered by Wells Fargo and would proceed with foreclosure and put a sale date on my house. Then I got a letter saying I was not accepted to get a loan modification under HAMP, a federal program set up by President Obama, and they would proceed to foreclosure. Then I was told I would have to accept the bank's program for modification, which wasn't as protected a procedure. Finally, Wells Fargo put me into a trial payment process for 3 months. Then I received a letter saying I had a loan modification from Wells Fargo. It was for 4 years and reduced my interest by 2%. Then the loan reverted to the old loan. The interest rate offered was barely below the going rate for interest from the banks. At the time of reversion, the large payment on the principal would also kick in, doubling the present mortgage. Wells Fargo said if I didn't like the offer, no problem, just say refuse, sign the papers, and send them back. I did so, and immediately I was out of the system and read the newspaper to discover that my house was in foreclosure. I freaked out sufficiently so that they put me back into the system and eventually started me on another course of 3 months' payments. At that point, I would have taken anything. They offered me a loan modification only slightly better than the first offer. They added unpaid payments at the higher rate accumulated over the year and a half, plus interest, and in addition about $2,000 in fees for their lawyers for me having gone into foreclosure. All in all, it added about $16,000 to my loan. I still revert to the original mortgage in a couple of years and will have the added principal payments so that my payments will increase fourfold. I will be at very high risk for foreclosure at that time. Thank you very much.
My name is Fanchen Faber. I just wanted to add a little bit, which is that on the house next to mine, the people walked away from the house, and it went up for sale on the auction block. And as a result, the property values all around us dropped dramatically. And when I was talking to the assistant county assessor around the fact that my county taxes would be lower because my property value had dropped so much, he said he just didn't understand what was going on in the county. He said that banks were foreclosing on people who had the capacity to work out some kind of a loan modification and to pay them, and then putting the houses up for sale at a lower, so that they received less money than they would have gotten if they kept the people who owned the houses in the houses. In other words, they were pushing the foreclosure process for no financial reason that we can figure out, and pushing the foreclosure process in order to do whatever manipulation of money that they were able to do through the foreclosure process. And he was dumbfounded about how it was going. So I just wanted to add that to the mix of facts. And as a result, the property values all in my entire neighborhood dropped, and our property taxes dropped as well, which didn't quite make up for the drop in property values. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
So is there interest by the council to bring this as an action item on a future agenda? Either this version or another version of this resolution that was presented?
I'd be willing to do it. I mean, could we maybe have just a committee, ad hoc committee, just to bring something back?
I looked at, if you make some changes in here that are a little bit more within our scope, I'd be willing to consider. Do you want to?
I'd volunteer for that.
Be on the ad hoc committee?
I can do it, yeah, with you.
Okay.
Okay, just so work up some things and
I just followed up,
Say what?
And you can't send it to us, so we can bounce it back. So you can, but you can send it to our city manager.
Okay.
And her infinite wisdom can help craft something that we can actually achieve.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, folks.
Thank you.